Welcome to these sweet, tiny spreckles of internet negative ions that spring and surf upon communal, starry-eyed astral planes that sprinkle themselves with high karate cologne, stir their caffeine with the cinnamon and frog fruit. They pack their MP3s with Damien's greatest hits. Damn the social commentators who decry the internet as cold, anti-intellectual, and impersonal. They are liars. Dirty liars. They are the devil, and the devil is a liar. Praise all that is good about Lord Krishna. Praise the Buddha. Praise Jesus. Praise Yolanka, the space god. Praise all that was good about Kara Dagyan. And we at Slammin Stan bring you sweet lies, sultry truths, and philosophies oh so shallow. And from L.A. to Spain to Barcelona, where Fernandez dwells, we're dousing you with it. We're dousing you with it. We're dousing you with it. I am high on the blue-collar capitalist swill, that is CMLL, because they make the most bitching performances these days. It don't get more bitching than that. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, all my babies, to Slammin Stan, number 13. This is Vandal Drummond, and I am joined here with Alfredo Esparza, who should be booking AAA these days.
And we're also joined by Steve Dr. Lucha Sims.
Doctor?
Am I on?
Yeah, you're on now.
He is the present-day doc. Welcome, Dr. Lucha, Steve Sims. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the only person in existence to hold a Ph.D. in luchology. This is the man.
I learned it all from the Viva La Lucha newsletter.
Exactly. You are one who witnessed the gig head of Dr. Jerry Graham.
I am. That was a great intro. The only thing was missing was bopping somebody on the head with a trash can when it was over.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man, I knew I was missing something. Well, okay, all you people out there listening, add that as a visual. When you play this back, play it back several times, and add that as a visual. As a vigil? No, a visual.
No, don't eat it. Don't eat it. Eat it. See it.
That's right. Be it. Dr. Lucha, how are you doing tonight?
I am actually, for the first time in about 5 days, I'm actually healthy.
That's excellent, because I heard you on Brian Alvarez's show, and, you know, most people probably would see that as coughing and colds, but I saw it as art.
It was true performance art, and no doubt about it.
Exactly. You know, I heard you. It sounded painful, you know, hearing you, you know, being really stoic and delivering the lucha news, you know, sneezing, coughing, and it sounded painful, and that's what this man will sacrifice for the world of art.
Anything. I'll even shave my head if Negro Casas loses, which he won't.
By the way, I heard about all those grandstandings made, and I will add my 2 cents into that. I will shave my head if Negro Casas wins the match of Mask of Mistico.
You'll shave your head?
I will shave my head. Alfredo, will you shave your head?
No.
Okay, well, you're probably wiser than any of us then.
Actually, I won't, because I just got a haircut, so.
And you hate getting ripped off. You don't want to be gypped.
It's already short. So it's,
you know, those haircut things are a rip-off. I don't
know if they're a rip-off, because mostly they rip off my gray hair and leave the rest, the natural color that I was born with.
Well, that's a rip-off in itself, but I got one of those haircut things, and 6 months later it was all back. You know?
That reminds me of this guy I worked with about 10 years ago who tried to insist upon me that prostitution was the greatest business of all time, because six minutes after you're done selling what you have, you still have it.
I like that. Who told you that, Steve?
It was one of these guys that carries the petitions around in front of supermarkets.
Oh, God, I haven't seen one of those guys in a while. I usually see them in front of CVS Pharmacy or Walmart.
Well, you're doing well out there in the far western or far eastern suburbs of L.A. County. Down here in San Diego, we see them everywhere.
Interesting. It must make
Anyway, we have the most important night of the year tomorrow night. Wrestling wise.
Tell us about it.
Tell us. Well, I really do want to introduce the topics, but let it be a discussion. And I have to add something here. I've left some of my notes back at the office, so I don't actually have 3 of the 6 match notes in front of me, which is matches 2, 3, and 4. but it's, to a large extent, for its hardcore audience, it's a two-match card. The top two matches are the card that people will come to see.
Obviously, Mistico versus Negro Casas in the Mask versus Hair.
Yes, where the living legend of Mexico, it's very hard to describe to someone who is not followed Lucha at least a little bit how important Negro Casas is to his promotion. But that's the main event, and then in the semifinal they have the Yellow Wave, the Orientals, the Japanese, Liger, Yujiro Naito, and Okumura, facing two good guys and two bad guys from Mexico in a Mexico versus Japan 8-man tag.
Yeah, Ultimo Guerrero, Shocker, Black Warrior, and Hector Garza.
Well, Hector Garza, who apparently have assigned a non-aggression pact that they won't beat each other up until the match is over.
It don't get more bitchin' than that.
And Kurt's been watching Lucha this week, so he's actually familiar with everybody now.
Yes, I have Alfredo Esparza to thank for that. I have been watching some totally awesome CMLL DVDs.
Are these the same kind that you can get at slambamjam.com?
Exactly. They look very familiar.
Oh, we got another caller.
Who's there?
Oh, let me see.
Bix.
Caller, you're on the line.
It's David Bix. Hi, guys.
Hey, Bixie baby, how are you tonight?
Good. Calling because just found out something that may be of interest to you guys that I don't know why I didn't know till now, but apparently Lucha Va Voom is running in New York City on Sunday.
I hear everybody...
They're running Chicago tomorrow night as well.
Wow.
Yeah, now, I haven't been to the show, to any of their shows, obviously, so I'm wondering, how are they usually, I mean, are they geared too much towards non-fans, or
everybody
what?
I know who has gone to the shows, except for a couple of wrestling snobs, say they have a blast. I've known non-wrestling fans who have gone who just say they had the time of their lives. Okay. And I've heard mixed things about the actual wrestling itself. Mm-hmm. Some enjoy it, some, think they're just kind of going through the moves. I would say go check it out.
Okay, then.
I hear the burlesque shows alone are worth the money.
Yeah, especially if you've never been before, I highly recommend it. You can't be a wrestling prude and you can't be a sex prude and enjoy it, but anybody else can enjoy it.
I know, when I saw the whole burlesque angle, I saw beautiful visions of Iris Chacon roaming through my head, dancing in my head, and that's when I thought there is a higher power, the minute I saw Iris Chacon back in the 70s.
Any idea as far as who they've actually been using lately, as far as, I guess, name luchadors? Because at least in the Village Voice, they said that Cassandro's going to be there, so that has me looking forward to it, but I don't know who else.
Cassandro has been on their shows in the past.
Yeah, he's a regular on there now.
David, if you go to the CubsFan.com /CMLL, the top post right now has a link click to the card in Chicago, and I believe it's the exact card for New York as well. They're generally using Blue Demon Jr. on top and bringing in the Mexican minis, and everybody else is usually Americans.
So you could skip out early then.
I heard you do get your money's worth. I've heard very few people who've left those shows disappointed.
The only thing I have heard is from people who've been to it the 9th or the 10th time is that they don't have 9 or 10 shows worth of ideas, but for 2 or 3 shows, it's not like nothing you've ever seen.
And I'm trying to find, I don't see anything on, let's see, line up.
It's under a link. I think it's just the word Chicago is highlighted, where he explains why he's not going to go to the Va Voom show.
Okay.
And he's going to.
Oh, that's right. He was.
Well, yeah, I was like, wait, I thought I saw him say something about not wanting to see Queehee in a sex show, which I don't know why he wouldn't want to.
I know. I mean, that would have sold.
Any other, I think his point is any other night of the year he would, but in the night of the one most important anniversary show, the one CMLL card, where his whole gang that he's developed a community with over 2 or 3 years is all chatting online. It's like a family reunion, and it's hard to miss just because there'll always be another Lucha Va Voom show.
This is true, but how often do they hit the cities like Chicago and New York? I mean, Southern California, they hit all the time.
Chicago's pretty often now.
Yeah,
they've been going every year now.
New York, they definitely haven't done before. I would guess it was an athletic commission issue. I mean, if they still require it, I don't know. I mean,
New York has one of the strictest athletic commissions in history. from the beginning of time till present.
Yeah, I don't see a card on Lucha Blog.
Yeah, there was. Let's put it this way: there was problems.
It wasn't a card, but it was a link to a card.
Oh.
If I remember correctly, but if not, then probably one of the websites and stuff.
Now the link he has on Chicago doesn't have it.
Oh, he updated. That's why.
I mean, I probably want to go anyway, but I don't know. I don't know. And it's just weird though that the way that New York has never really had much in the way of a lucha presence when you really think they would.
They had a brief lucha presence. Well, not really a lucha presence, but a Puerto Rican presence in the 1970s. There was a small club where they would run, I think, biweekly or monthly shows, and they'd fly people in like Jack Veneno. Dr. Jerry Graham worked a bunch of their shows.
Oh, was that the deal where Ringside 41 or whatever it was called?
What was it? There was a name of the promotion, and I'm blanking on what it was, but that was one of the first connections I made with Ed Moretti. Is we were talking about indie promotions, and I mentioned a Puerto Rican promotion, and he asked if it was that one, and it's, you didn't meet a lot of smarks back then who knew all this detailed trivia. But, who was running it? There's a guy named John Crespo.
I know that there was some sort of Spanish-oriented promotion in the 70s on Channel 41 here in New York called Ringside 41, and apparently, like, the top babyface was Frankie Williams, and he would do a ring entrance on a burro.
Really? I never heard about that.
I didn't either, and wherever I read it, it was like even like Charles Warburton didn't know about it, and I figured if he didn't know about it, like as far as New York stuff on TV.
What I would give for tape of that, let alone just even Frankie Williams riding a burro, that would top his appearance on Piper's Pit.
I mean, when you think about New York, we had the one AAA show, and Steve, by the way, how much did that draw? Because I thought it did well, but I was reading an old Observer with the Pena obit, and it said it didn't draw that well.
It didn't. They were disappointed. The expenses were also very high. So though it did have some fans in the seats, they almost lost money on it.
So was it more because they ran the theater at the Garden and it was such an expensive venue?
I believe that was correct, although I can't swear to it, but I believe that was correct. And
well,
apparently there's some licensing issues that all the wrestlers had to get licensed or medical checkups or whatever with the state, and the expenses just ended up going through the roof.
Like I said, New York is famous for having a strict athletic commission. Johnny Legend was looking into running Incredibly Strange Wrestling there, and there's a number of reasons this never came up, but one of the things that came up was the athletic commission would be a bitch, even with something like Incredibly Strange Wrestling.
I know there was some sort of change with the commission. Maybe it's the promoter's license is still required, but the wrestlers aren't required to be licensed. Maybe I know something changed, but there was that show, and there was the Falcon Copares indie promotion UCW that somehow ended up with a CMLL working agreement.
Yeah, the promotion back in the 70s, there were a number of fans like Mike O'Hara and Bill Hill who, had the hunch that it was actually a front for some other operation because they would always be flying wrestlers in from Puerto Rico who could usually get a pretty good payday elsewhere. And the place that we're running was just this dinky little dance hall.
Do any of you know how that Indian Queen somehow ended up booking people from CMLL? It was around like 95, 96.
I know that it happened, but I don't know how it happened.
Okay. Because there was that, and I don't think they advertised it at all. I just remember Evan Ginsberg saying something about it in his newsletter later that they booked women from CMLL. And allegedly they were taped, but they never showed up anywhere.
Even today, it's strictly a money issue. If you have the money, you can book almost anybody for CMLL. You can't book them on the anniversary show weekend, but for 3 or 4 Friday nights from now, if you wanted Blue Panther in Chicago, you could get him. It's just a matter of money. But Paco will book anybody anywhere if he gets a booking fee.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what else was there. There was MLW did bring in Shocker and La Parka, but that wasn't a lucha show. And there was, I think the only other thing would have been LXW, which was a disaster. That was the thing where it was like some sort of XPW affiliated guy bringing in a mix of XPW guys and some Chikara guys and some guys from Mexico. And I remember they did buy commercials on Raw, but they drew like under 100 people. Plus it was in Jamaica and Queens, and it's not exactly a neighborhood that people like to go to.
Yeah, you go with a whole troop if you large troops if you hit one of those shows. Although I remember Hadco Plaza.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hadco Plaza in Los Angeles. Yeah, I remember a lot of people wouldn't go there because it was reputed to be a bad neighborhood, but that was one of those neighborhoods where the bark was a lot worse than the bite. A friend of mine named Lloyd Lee and I went on a regular basis for several years, and we were usually the only gringos, except for a stray gringo here and there, and the infamous Uncle Wally, who was always leering at all the young Latino wrestlers. And not only did nobody ever give us a hassle, but everybody was, really nice to us. We were always told, if you go there, the Mexicans will hate you. They don't like gringos. And, Lloyd was the, archetype of the heavy metal with the big hair and everything. And this was the early 1980s. And, everybody is like, hey, how you doing, neighbor?
Yeah, I don't remember ever getting even really strange looks at All Nation Center or out in Pomona.
Yeah, that's right. Because you attended a number of those shows, and nobody looked twice at you. And I probably wouldn't go walking in the neighborhood at night alone or anything like that. But usually you go straight to the arena, you hang. The people are pretty cool, and
David, I suspect a lot of this is Independence Day stuff, because the first Lucha card of the entire year in Minneapolis is this weekend, and Lucha Va Voom running in strange cities is probably having to do with the fact that it's Independence Day weekend. I know the next Lucha Va Voom in L.A. is Halloween weekend, and it's their annual Halloween theme show, which, in my opinion, is the best of all that's the one you'd want to go to if you had the choice of going to different Va Voom shows. That's that's almost Johnny Legend-esque in its strangeness.
Based on everything I've heard, Bix, you should really check the show out.
I think I will then. One thing is that I've never been the biggest fan of standing room shows, but I think for something like this, I will.
Yeah, everything I've heard is positive. Like I said, with the exception of the prudish smarks who forgot how to have fun. Everybody I know has had a good time at those shows.
Yeah, I also read on the other side that you'll even have people who are having a good time, but not wrestling fans. Cool.
There's some wrestling fans out there who have to learn to have fun all over again.
Yeah,
and that really is the truth.
Now, I wanted to see, Kurt, if you had watched the YouTube videos I sent you the links to yet.
I have been having a lot of problems with my computer internet hookup lately, so I have not. But you will be proud to know I finally watched the Harlem Globetrotters meet Snow White.
Yeah.
The greatest.
Is that off Gilligan's Island?
No, this is a cartoon. This
was great. Yeah. The Harlem Globetrotters are playing in front of the Wicked Queen, and they do something to insult her. Didn't they bop her with a basketball or something?
I think so.
And she banishes them from the land, and they are walking through the forest, and they're getting really hungry, and they need a place to stay, and they just happen to knock upon the door of Snow White. And they have a big adventure with her, but the greatest line of the whole thing is when she makes them dinner. And since she usually makes dinner for a bunch of dwarfs, she makes tiny portions, and so she made them these tiny, tiny hot dogs. And one of the Globetrotters looks at it and says, I have never seen such a teeny, weeny. And the greatest part is the Queen turns babyface at the end of it.
I do have this on YouTube, by the way. I did upload it.
Oh, it's brilliant. Everybody must see this.
Wait, guys, we have to ask our guest, David, if he will join us in our pact, in our blood pact, that if Negro Casas wins tomorrow night and Mistico loses, that we'll shave our hair.
Well, I do need a haircut, and usually grows quick, but, I actually haven't been following the Lucha News that much lately. What, is it a hair versus mask match?
Yeah.
Here versus Mask match. And
Dick, where you been?
Negro Casas has about as much chance as the Washington Nationals have of making this year's World Series.
Yeah, sure. No, I'll definitely join in on that.
Awesome. So the only holdout we have is Alfredo.
Well, because I already got a haircut, so.
Okay. Oh, you could shave your goatee.
Oh, that's true. I could do that.
Yeah, that would be cool.
It is kind of long, so I could always shave that.
Yeah. Ooh, or you can do an inverse of that. Instead of shaving it, you could not shave it for a year.
Or I could shave that and let the sides grow.
Or worse, he has to put a Mistico mask on and wear it all year.
There you go. Wear a Mistico mask all year. Won't it protect me from the swine flu?
it'll make you suddenly going into praying positions in the middle of all your daily activities.
Yeah. I hear it's a bitch when you're eating your meals, though.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Now, tomorrow night's show at Arena Mexico, of course, Mistico versus Negro Casas. That's the scene-stealing match, no doubt.
Yes, Kurt, I have to ask you, you've been watching Negro Casas even a little bit longer than I have, which I've been more than 20 years. How would you rate him compared to all the other Mexican luchadors that you've seen in your time?
What
makes him stand out? Why do the fans, after seeing him for now 30 years, still love him more than anybody else out there?
Well, one, I think Negro Casas is not just the best luchador I've seen. I think he is the best wrestler I've seen, period. Now, you could make arguments for people like Ric Flair, Terry Funk, but first and foremost, what I love about Negro Casas is throughout all these years is he does what pro wrestling should be. He makes it look like he's getting the crap beat out of him. He takes crazy looking bumps. Now, note that I said crazy looking bumps. He knows how to economize his body. He is not obsessed with making every match a 5-star match. He is not trying to reach for the sun. He is in there to entertain. He is in there to get the match over. Having a 5-star match isn't necessarily the goal of being a professional wrestler. I think so much of it has to do with pacing, not just the pacing of an individual match, but pacing your body year after year so you can have a long career. So, you probably know better than I, Steve, but I don't know of a lot of serious injuries that Negro Casas has had.
No, he never looks for a minute these days out of control. No matter what's happening to him, even flying backwards from above, he never looks out of control.
Yes.
But he always looks like he's actually been taking a punishment.
Exactly. And to me, that's a brilliant professional wrestler. Especially in this day and age, people seem so focused on having off-the-chart matches. This is going to sound strange, but so many wrestlers' work ethics are actually disturbing because it seems like they can't go in there without just doing something off the charts. And in addition to that, I see a lot of American wrestlers who are doing a lot of flying moves, and there's even things that a lot of basic luchadores learn about catching each other that I don't see today. And I'm not claiming to be a great worker myself or anything, but there's some basics I learned in lucha where you can protect your body, significantly better if you are doing topes and catch each other correctly. One of the things I see so many times...
what did they tell you the first day of wrestling school is? Make your opponent look good, and you're responsible. Your opponent doesn't get hurt. Exactly.
In fact, one of the things I got chewed out for when I was, learning was when guys were, giving the, simple body presses. If I fell before it was time, they'd chew me out saying, that's going to hurt him, it's going to hurt you. You catch him, you break the fall first, then you fall. And, getting back to Casas, he's just the epitome of that. I remember the very first time I ever saw Negro Casas. It was in 1985, and there was a show promoted at the Olympic Auditorium in Los Angeles. And this was back in the day when there were not a lot of, big-time wrestling shows in L.A. Or actually, I should correct myself, big-time lucha libre shows. And with very little publicity, this show drew probably almost 7,000 people. It had a lot. It was a loaded card, at least loaded with names like Super Astro, Tinieblas. And on this show was a guy named Negro Casas. A lot of that match was a bust as far as actual in-ring wrestling because whoever was promoting the show didn't have their shit together, and there was a boxing ring used. And like most boxing rings, it had 4 ropes, and these ropes were the loosest ropes I had ever seen. Now, if you watch lucha regularly, loose ropes is sacrilege. And so what we saw in the opening matches with the local luchadores were a lot of guys trying to have as good a match as they could, with these, horrible ropes, this horrible ring, but they weren't really pulling it off. And then as we saw some of the bigger names involved, it wasn't much better. And then I saw an 8-man tag team, and the only 3 people I remember in the match on the Technico side was Tinieblas and Super Astro. And the one Bruto I remember was Negro Casas. It was the first time I had ever seen him. I recognized his name. I think I might have even seen a little bit of him in some of the Lucha Libre magazines. But what blew my mind is what he did with Tinieblas. Tinieblas, famous for being one of the worst in-ring workers in history. The man with the coolest mask, the coolest outfit of all time, but dead in the ring. He should have been the Zombie.
He had a Lucha with him, didn't he?
On this show, at least, he didn't. Oh. I think this might have been pre-Lucha.
Oh.
If I remember correctly, though, because before you go anywhere, before I forget, that somehow Dead in the Ring reminds me of the greatest headline that Steve ever wrote in Lucha Libre Weekly.
What's that?
Killer isn't dead, but he wrestles like he is.
Oh my God, that was when Roy Lucier spread the rumor that the killer had died. Rapid Roy the stock car boy. I remember that. Well, Tinieblas, guy, and I had seen Tinieblas a number of times. Nothing I ever saw was worth watching. And then he gets in the ring with Negro Casas. And it was like Negro Casas was wrestling a car and making the car look like supersonic. Tinieblas hardly did anything, but Casas was just hitting the ropes, hitting the loose ropes, and just doing spots with Tinieblas that made him actually look competent. Not only that, Negro Casas just had this charisma about him that was evident just in those, several minutes of watching him. And he put over Tinieblas like $1 million. That is also the first time I saw him do the bump. Oh, in fact, I now remember one of the other Technicos was Hijo de Santo, and the reason I remember is that was the first time I saw him do the bump where Casas would be climbing the turnbuckles from the inside of the ring. Santo would drop kick him in the butt, and then Casas would fall butt first onto the floor below. And that was the first time I saw him and said, that was the scariest looking bump, but I could tell he didn't get hurt. And when he hit that floor, the audience just popped, half excited and half freaked out that they saw some guy just get critically injured. But when he took that bump, I saw as he was taking the fall downward, he broke it, by placing his hand on the apron, just really briefly, just enough to break it, and then landing on his butt. And the only thing he does different about that bump now is he lands on his feet now instead of his butt. Hence, he's economizing his body.
He's a little older now.
Yeah, a little older and a little wiser, although I think he entered this business with more wisdom than a lot of wrestlers have after 20 years. Now, that's, and on top of that, whether he's, it's almost better him being a Rudo, even if he's wrestling other Rudos, because I think his charisma really comes out in him being this bratty figure, almost like
smart-assy.
A smart-ass figure, kind of a cat weasel. Kind of like England's cat weasel, only Casas is a great wrestler on top of being a smart-ass, being a trickster. And how can you not love a guy like that? Now, that's my take on Negro Casas, and you could probably even add something to that. What is your
just a little history, and actually this is a very quick wrap-up, but back in the 70s, CMLL was EMLL, and they had a promotion split off for them in Forum, which promoted under the UWA banner, and they took a lot of the stars. But at the time, the stars they took were the older stars, the heavyweight stars, the like Ray Mendoza and Anibal and Rene Guajardo and Carlos Lagarde.
Alfonso Dantes.
So EMLL started to counter program by doing the same thing they're doing today, taking the homegrown new stars and promoting them until they got over. And what they did was they tried to promote speed. And so in 1981 at the anniversary show, so 28 years ago, the opening match was Fuerza Guerrera and Negro Casas, which at the time people knew who they were, but they were opening match wrestlers for CMLL, and they had what is reputed to be a match that was the most rapidly worked, fast-paced, the two wrestlers sprinting through the whole match that CMLL or EMLL had yet seen at that time, and that kind of started a trend in Mexico that led to the lighter weight, speedier teams like the Death Missionaries and the Fantasticos and all the sorts of trios that were good speed guys came from this match, which tore down the house as the opening match in the show, and the rest of the show couldn't get over, and they never did that again. But Casas had made his reputation, and even though he did go and work for UWA for a while and was UWA champion for a while, this was during the time when Paco Alonso and Francisco Flores had kind of come to a mutual agreement to trade talent, and the bitterness wasn't there anymore. But Casas has basically been in CMLL. Even if he was loaned out for a while, he's been there for most of his 30 years in the business, and he is just identified with the company now. And there's been a long trend that fans, for whatever reason, just cannot boo somebody that's been around 25 years or more and still works at a very high level, whether it's Perro Aguayo or Cian Caras, that trying to work them as Rudos is very, very, very tough. And Casas is doing it, but when he gets in the ring tomorrow night, it will be very emotional because I think people there see it the same way I do, that this is his last real main event, main event, top of the card, the biggest card of the year by far, et cetera, et cetera. This is his last shining glory moment.
And this is what surprised me so much because as I've told everybody and their brother, I've kind of been off the radar with Lucha Libre until very recently. And when I saw, his recent work, as La Peste Negra with Mr. Niebla and Felino, and his individual matches with Mistico, I was stunned because I was expecting to see Negro Casas as he is now, thinking, no, he'll probably still be fun to watch, but a shell of what he was. And shame on me for thinking that, because I just sat there saying, man, this guy still got it. Is it me, or he has not aged much at all?
I think he ended up liking what the whole gimmick with Mr. Niebla. I think it kind of woke him up a bit.
I agree with that.
Gimmick.
Plus, trading wives and mistresses every 6 months is good for you, keeping you young, right?
I guess that will keep some people young. A lot of people that can...
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know, but...
Yeah, neither would I.
It just seems like he's a different person ever since he got with Mr. Niebla.
So doesn't it look like he's really enjoying himself and having fun now?
Yeah, he's having fun, whereas before it kind of seemed like he was just doing the same thing over and over.
Kind of going through the motions?
Yeah, even when you watch some of the other guys, you'll just see them go through the motions. Then they put them into like a different group or something, and all of a sudden they're all awake, back into like Mr. Niebla. Look at Mr. Niebla. His last couple of years before he went to AAA, he looked really dead in CMLL. He goes to AAA, gets a little charisma in him, comes back to CMLL, and he looks much better now than he did before.
Yeah, the La Peste Negra, I gotta say, I mean, that's revitalizing. I mean, well, it's revitalized me as a fan even.
It's fun. It's
fun. And I love watching Felino again. I missed watching that guy.
He's the only one that doesn't get it. He's the one that gets left out every time, though.
That's a shame because I think Felino was really talented. And I think back to his feud with Ciclone Ramirez in the early 90s. And
ooh, that's a famous one.
Yeah, that was some really wonderful matches. And I'll never forget the spot they did, kind of ahead of its time spot for CMLL, but when they were gearing towards their mask versus mask match, they did this spot where you see Felino crawling through an alley at night, and there's a bunch of garbage laying there, and in that garbage is a trash television set. And out of nowhere, the television set turns on, and Ciclone Ramirez is on TV and taunting Felino, and Felino is just like moving around like a cat, like swatting at him, and I thought, oh my Lord, this is brilliant. This is Argentina comes to Mexico, baby. It was beautiful.
Well, did you ever see the stuff from like around the beginning of the decade with the Guapo stuff and also the thing with Black Tiger, Dr. Wagner in the doctor's office?
No, I missed that.
Oh my God, I gotta put this stuff on DVD because, okay, the Black Tiger thing you'd especially like. It was, I'm trying to remember, Steve, was the idea that, was it supposed to be sort of known that Black Tiger was Silver King at that point?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
The hardcore CMLL fan would have known that.
Okay, so it sort of seemed like the idea was that he was sort of taunting him, and I forget what it was, but somehow it was like a black cat shows up in Dr. Wagner Jr.'s doctor's office, and after he's treating a patient, he sees the cat morph into Black Tiger. He becomes enraged and then throws the cat out the window as we hear meowing sound effects and crashing.
Oh, my Lord. Brilliant.
And there was also around then was the Guapo stuff where it was, at the time it was Scorpio Jr., Bestia Salvaje, and Emilio Charles, and Shocker joined them. And I forget who it was like. It was sort of like they were sort of jealous of his actual Guapo-ness. And he turned babyface by switching out their blonde hair dye with black dye. So they were no longer Guapo.
Oh, that
this was right about, if I remember correctly, it was right about 9/11, and then they rebranded the black-haired guys as Los Talibanes.
Yep.
Now, if I remember right, was Los Talibanes, was it the Guapos who were doing the trench coat mafia gimmick for a while?
No, that was Universo Dos Milan, Apollo Dantes.
Okay, which was tragically funny in retrospect, as the whole trench coat mafia in Columbine ended up being an urban legend anyways.
Well, I thought it was, didn't Kurgan or someone do a gimmick in AAA too that was based on that?
Who?
There were several. There were actually several.
I don't think
Kurgan from WWF. There were
long black coats after Columbine.
Yeah. But I think they were doing that before that. Los Capos were wearing long trench coats before that. I think they were wearing it 99 or 98 or when was?
If it was before Columbine, I don't remember, but it sure could have been.
I believe Columbine took place in 1999.
Yeah. So it might have been about that time that they started wearing them.
Yeah, it was 99.
The big question is, can we get these DVDs from SlamBamJam.com?
Not at the moment. They're still on video.
But maybe we can. Oh, so we have several sources here. We have Bixenspan, and we have Alfredo. We have Slam Bam Jam and Bixie Baby.
Steve, I was going to ask you, how much is Negro Casas getting for losing his hair?
I believe he's getting whatever 400,000 pesos would be now.
400,000 pesos?
Yeah, $35,000 in that area.
Probably.
That's scuttlebutt, and it's very, very close to what the last two payoffs have been at Arena Mexico. So it may, and you know, they'll sell out because of the ticket broker, the way they go through ticket brokers. In fact, they've basically already sold out. They've sold out 97%, 96% of the actual possible gate.
Wow.
That they can get. So they've basically got their money for it. So that's the figure I heard. Whatever would be 400 translate to 400,000 pesos.
Would he really be getting more though than Blue Panther got for his mask? Because Blue Panther got 30,000, right?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on a lot of things. But Casas is also part of the booking committee, and
so he gets paid more.
and he's been with the promotion a lot longer, and there's other factors.
Plus, he's a bigger name too, so.
Besides the influence that he'd have, do the bookers in Mexico, are they involved with the payoffs like the bookers in the U.S. used to be? Are they the guys making the payoffs or no?
Not the anniversary show. The anniversary show is everybody gets, like 10% more than regular, but the guy that loses the stip on top gets a really big payoff.
Okay.
Now, that's really settled into almost a formula the last 5 years since Paco decided to go with higher ticket prices. And the 1 year they only sold out half the house. He rejiggered things a little bit, and now his formula has sold out. Pretty much the same thing at Dos Leyendas. They have a set fee, and regardless, even if it were Mistico that we're losing tomorrow night, he'd get probably the same payoff that Casas would get for losing his hair.
In fact, when we talk about CMLL in general and monetary situations, something that I would love to bring up with you, you have brought it up on different shows and, in newsletters, but the point never seems to get through people's heads. I hear so many people seem dumbstruck that CMLL is not in a total panic over lagging audience attendance, low audience attendance through the year. And from what I've understood from you, they don't have to worry too much because they have low overhead, they own some of their arenas, and they're not in a place where they have to panic if the economy's down or the attendance is down. And you can explain it much more eloquently than I can, Steve, but could you tell
Hopefully I can do it in a very brief manner, too, but over the course of the years, Salvador Lutheroff, who was the founder of CMLL, just hated debt because when he first got into the business, he couldn't grow his business because he's spending so much time in renting places out. So before he died, he ended up building the two arenas that they run in Mexico City, Arena Mexico and Arena Coliseo, and owning them wholly outright. So they're completely owned by him and his family. And the only expenses they have are the lights. Everything else they have is on a contract basis. They pay the wrestlers a percentage of the gate. They pay the concessionaires a percentage of what they sell. They pay security a percentage of the gate, etc. So their expenses are so low as to be virtually zero, to where it is said as a truism, even if it's not technically true, that every show they run at those two arenas and the one in Guadalajara that they own, they make a profit on, even if the profit is only $5, but it's just because everything is a percentage of the gate. So that's how they started, and they have since bought other arenas. They own an arena in Puebla, and I have heard rumors they are looking at buying their arena in Cuernavaca that's up for sale, the one in Acapulco, but business there has been so bad for so long, I don't know if they actually rebought it or not, and one in San Luis Potosi.
So how's business doing for them this year?
Business has been audience business has been poor. Once you understand that, then they adjust the salaries of the people and they adjust how much they pay. They have a large staff and they have a large group of retired wrestlers that they also pay salaries to. Very little is under contract. They may have 3 or 4 wrestlers under contract, like Mistico and Ultimo Guerrero, and everything else is just percentages, and so people make a little less each year. Fortunately, they are considered the daddy promotion in Mexico, and in Mexico, when promoters are looking to bring in wrestlers to run a lucha show around the country, usually CMLL is the first place they go to, and those guys are able to work still to this day 7 to 10 shots a week, whereas the AAA guys are working 4 to 5 shots a week.
Which is why they're all quitting too.
Well, they're not all quitting, but
just some of them.
They're just not getting enough dates to make money unless they're in the top 2 or 3 matches of the show, and those are the same guys year after year after year.
Yeah. And they have that opening match with Psycho Circus, the undefeated Psycho Circus.
Well, it depends on, is it Murder Clown, or is it Killer Clown, or is it Fredo Clown? Who's the clown that's in there this week?
Are they the only undefeated trio?
To this day, they are legitimately, well, let's put it this way, Chris Elner found one record of one match that was clearly detailed that they lost, that AAA denies it and said that never happened, which it may well have happened, but as far as we can, I mean, they've put too much effort since that match happened about a year ago to keep them undefeated, that it was either a giant mistake and the referee actually, counted something wrong, or the reporter just got it wrong. So for all intents and purposes, they're legitimately undefeated, going on their 23rd consecutive month.
And they're still opening shows.
And they're still in the opening match.
And one of the reasons I wanted to bring up that, just the whole method of operation with CMLL is the period in history I remember the clearest was when AAA made the raid of CMLL talent, and everybody I knew swore this is the end for CMLL. They are going under. They are a dying promotion. And what fascinated me is when AAA made that raid, it seemed to, definitely put a dent in the CML shows, but they didn't seem to panic. They seemed to just run the course.
They don't, because they have seen this happen year after year, time after time, that wrestling business is cyclical, especially when you're going to keep a basic roster in place for 20 or 30 years. I mean, Atlantis has been there 20 years, and also, Guerrero's been there 15 years, and Shocker's been there for so many years, and you can go on and with the guys that have been there for so long. But if you're going to keep a long-term roster and not turn them over every 6 months to a year like in the old territory business, then you're going to have cycles when people get tired of your matches and your booker.
And I think so many promotions today could learn from that, because it seems like whenever things aren't consistently bang-up business, people kind of go into a panic and, what can we do to keep it peaking?
Yeah, there's a saying they have that's very similar to the saying farmers have in the U.S. here, that one good year pays for 7 or 6. That you'll have 6 years where you make a little bit of money or lose a bit of money, and then you'll have your year where business goes through the roof. And you've got to learn to take that money and save it or invest it and put it back in the business.
That's a great comparison.
That's the cyclical way that farming generally works. Family farming works in the U.S. too. So.
Now, we have 4 people who have watched a lot of Negro Casas over the years. I'd be interested to hear what each of us see as their favorite period in Negro Casas' career.
Apart from tomorrow night when he wins Mistico's mask?
Exactly. And we all shave our heads bald.
Let Fredo go first.
Me go first? I'll go. I'll probably go with the first time I actually saw him, which was back when he wrestled in Juarez, and he would wrestle against Hijo del Santo and Eddie Guerrero. He would tag up with Espanto Jr. That was probably my favorite time period. I
assume that was when you were a kid living in El Paso, right?
Yep. So my final years in El Paso.
You got to watch a lot of cool stuff on the Juarez TV, huh?
I even saw the Ku Klux Klan, which was brought up in I think it was on Boxy Lucha's website.
Somewhere I have a very bad quality tape of the Ku Klux Klan teaming with Conan.
But it's a different one, isn't it, or is it the one from Juarez?
Oh, is it different? I think it was the Juarez one, because it was...
Yeah, because the one in L.A. was the Chivos, wasn't it? The Chivos?
Oh, no, that wasn't the Chivos. There were a couple of knuckleheads who actually got gold teeth that said KKK on them. They were so into their gimmicks, and they were Latino, which was even funnier. The ones I saw on TV was in Juarez.
Yeah, so
I'm sorry, I just talked over somebody.
Yeah, no, that reminds me, here in New York and New Jersey, there's a indie guy, Crazy Ivan, and sometimes Skinhead Ivan, who's Puerto Rican with a Jewish girlfriend, but he wrestles with Skinhead Ivan.
I love it.
It'd be perfect for AAA now.
Oh. Now,
he may be the Luchador Sorpreso since they can't get Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah, that's true. My favorite Negro Casas era was, I believe it was 1996, when Hijo de Santo turned Rudo. And he turned on Casas, and for the first time we got to see a Negro Casas Hijo de Santo feud, where Negro Casas was the Technico and Hijo de Santo was the Rudo. And I love how Felino played a big part in that feud, too. It's one of those feuds, I knew it had to end eventually, but I hated to see that feud wind up. I thought it was done so brilliantly.
I think I'd have to agree with that as probably my favorite period, although my favorite Negro Casas match that I've seen, I would say, would be the college gym show with FMW guys, the 6-man match.
I remember that. I was there live, and it was one of the most enjoyable times I ever had at a wrestling match.
Did Barnett film you, Kurt?
Yeah, Barnett filmed them.
No, but are you on the video?
I'm probably at the video at ringside taking pictures of Casas and Santos' high spots. You could probably see me if you look hard enough, which was kind of funny because I was wrestling locally at the time, and I think I did something to pseudo-disguise myself. I stuffed my long hair in a baseball cap, if I remember correctly. But that was a great show, and it was like every smart fan who existed was there, it seemed. Rick Carter, Mike Tenay, and Karen Tenay, everybody was anybody was at that show.
It is such just this weird, chaotic mix of just the greatest wrestling. Because it's like Santo and Casas are having the best, probably of the matches I've seen on tape with them, probably the best stuff, exchanges on the mat and stuff I ever seen them do with each other. And meanwhile, you have Onita and Godo just brawling around the arena with, was it Horace Boulder and
Yes, Horace Boulder. And for some reason, it worked beautifully. Yeah. By all logic, that match should have been just a disaster. But for some reason, it worked beautifully. Just the brawling and the flying all mixed. It worked.
Kurt, was this the time when the night before they were in Tijuana?
Yes, it was.
And you went to Tijuana and Mil Mascaras told you he was 73?
Wait. No. Mil Mascaras, the time I met Mil Mascaras was in 1982. And at that time, he said he was 45. This was, and I actually saw Mil Mascaras without his mask because we had to drive him over the border, along with Tim Flowers. And the thing that actually shocked me was they used to joke about this in the Bill Apter magazines. But I thought it was just kidding around, but he really did have movie star looks. He was actually a very handsome guy, and the type of guy you wonder why is he wearing a mask.
That reminds me of a great story I read recently. It was on Scott Bowden's site, KentuckyFriedWrestling.com, that he mentioned when he was doing the emceeing the Memphis panel thing at the last Greg Price convention, that it was either before or during, he asked Jerry Jarrett about the time that Mil Mascaras worked Memphis, which he had talked about before, where it was Lawler and Fargo, I think, against Austin Idol and a mystery partner in a stretcher match. And somehow it ended up being Mil Mascaras as a heel.
A heel?
Yes, and Mil Mascaras, who's a big star in the magazines as a babyface, as a heel, and he did the stretcher job.
Oh, my gosh.
And for years, Scott Bowden was like, how did this happen? He had no idea, and no one really knew why. Cornette would joke to him, oh, that wasn't Mil Mascaras, that was the job guy Pepe Lopez in a Mil Mascaras mask. And,
which would never shock me. Do we know what happened?
Well, now we do. He's talking to Jerry Jarrett. Jerry Jarrett explains that somehow, I don't know, from NWA conventions or what, he had become friendly with Salvador Luderoff. And he, I guess he even took a trip to Mexico and stayed with them or ate dinner at their house or something. And, they're talking about Luderoff and reminiscing, and Mill seems really up for everything, and he says to Jarrett, "So, what do you want me to do?" And Jarrett told him, well, it's a stretcher match, and blah, 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 and he did the stretcher job.
Oh, my Lord. Wow. I almost wonder if a bodybuilder flew in posing as Mil Mascaras. No, that's amazing, though. Well, the funny story is one of the very first times I saw Mil Mascaras wrestle was in 1972. Occasionally they would tape the Friday night shows. They wouldn't air them until a couple of months later. But one night, Mil Mascaras was wrestling Ernie Ladd in a Texas death match. And this was the old-school Texas death match rules where you had to be pinned, and then you had to be down for a 10 count after you were pinned to lose. And probably 90% of the match was Mil Mascaras trouncing Ernie Ladd from pillar to post. And then Ernie Ladd, if I remember correctly, Ernie Ladd probably did something with his dreaded taped thumb that was a foreign object. And he beat Mil Mascaras clean in a Texas death match. And that was followed up with Raul Mata doing a run-in. And I had been watching pro wrestling maybe for 3 months, tops. And Raul Mata was like my favorite. He's also Bob Barnett's favorite wrestler of all time, if you don't know, next to John Tolis. But anyway, Raul Mata runs in and starts wailing on Ernie Ladd, and Ernie Ladd kind of like sells a few punches, but then he rakes Mata across the eyes, and nobody would sell an eye rake like Raul Mata. He would cover his face like somebody just ripped his face off. And then Ladd takes his tape thumb and starts jabbing Mata in the throat. And then Mata starts spitting up blood all over himself. Like his entire stomach is covered with blood, and he's lying on the mat having death spasms. And then Ruben Juarez, who was a babyface who was probably about 5'4", runs in the ring, takes off his dress shoe, and then starts just wailing on Ladd with his dress shoe. And Ladd sold for him like a motherfucker. Ladd bled for him, and Ladd did his famous spot where he had an Alka-Seltzer in his mouth and started foaming at the mouth because he was getting beaten so brutally. And it was, how long was it? It was like 20 years later when I talked to Jeff Walton, and Jeff Walton said that even though Ernie Ladd could be a difficult person to work with sometime, when it was time to put somebody over, he put them over like a king. And he, not only did he put over Ruben Juarez, but he requested that Ruben Juarez be the man that he put over. And everybody told him, "You're crazy. You can't put over a 5'4" guy over a 6'9" guy." But that's how great Ernie Ladd was. It worked. The crowd popped like crazy for it, and they put Ruben Juarez over in their subsequent matches also.
He did the same thing with Chavo Guerrero, didn't he?
He did. And a lot of people insist that the Chavo Guerrero victory over Ernie Ladd was more effective, and I would say initially it was, but it was also, in my opinion, the beginning of the end of the LA territory, because that was when they started booking the territory entirely around the Guerrero family. And that's not a knock on the Guerrero's talent. They're really talented, but they made it look like they were the most talented and the only talented wrestlers in the business. You know, all the heels were always made to look like buffoons when they were in with the Guerreros, and it really hurt the territory.
Eddie, though.
I'm sorry?
This was before Eddie, so...
Long before Eddie. Eddie was in a class all his own.
It was more painful back then because they didn't have Eddie in there.
Yeah,
well, back then it was a high school class.
Yeah, but they could have still thrown him in there at some point.
In fact, I remember even talking to Hector Guerrero once in 1979, and he talked about his kid brother Eddie, who's 10 years old and wants to be a wrestler someday. And I don't know, Eddie was so talented, he probably could have gotten over at 10 years old better than his brothers. I mean, I thought all three brothers, Mondo, Hector, and Chavo, were all talented, but it was just, let's put it this way, it got so ridiculous that at one point they gave Chavo Guerrero every championship in the territory at one time, including the tag team championships. He didn't have a partner. He was the tag team champions.
That's the way to put somebody over.
Yeah, it was the beginning. I mean, and that isn't the only thing. There were so many things about the LA territory where it almost seemed like they were trying to kill the territory intentionally. They did things so amazingly and competently. Like the one I loved was the 2 out of 3 fall matches where the first fall is for the America's title, the second shot fall is for the America's belt, the third fall is the Loser Leave Town.
Oh my God, I was just going to ask you about that.
No way.
No, because I started to somehow remember a call to Observer Live about this, and then I realized it was you.
Yeah, they did it on several occasions. In fact, they did it with Pat Patterson when he was feuding. He had a really short feud with the Canadian, who was Roddy Piper under a mask. And I think it was, when was it? In the early 90s, we were at Cauliflower Alley one year when it was in Studio City, and Dan Farron went up to Pat Patterson and asked him, do you have any really fun memories of wrestling at the Olympic Auditorium? We had a camcorder and we're going around asking all the people who wrestled L.A.
This is on the hallucination tape, isn't it?
I think it is. It very well might be.
Okay.
Because it's so memorable. And Pat Patterson says the memory that sticks out is I was in feuding with, I think it was Piper, and he said that they had the first fall is for the title, the second fall is for the belt, the third fall is Loser Leave Town, and he just had this look on his face like, what the fuck? I mean, could you imagine Pat Patterson, one of the most brilliant minds in wrestling, going to a territory and they pitched that to him? Yeah, they did that on a number of occasions.
Now, was the masked Canadian thing, was that after a Loser Leaves Town deal?
You know what? It must have been. I don't recall when Piper lost to Loser Leave Town, but he must have, because the way they generally did the Loser Leave Towns back then was, Piper would, be the most obnoxious heel he could be, and then they would sign him up for a Loser Leave Town match against one of the baby faces. And Piper was so brilliant because he would go on TV the week before and just start crying and pleading to call the match off. And he would, call to the fans and say, please, write the Olympic Auditorium, tell them you don't want this match, that you want Roddy Piper to stay, and that you love him. And the funniest part was Gene LaBelle would be staring at him really sternly and then scold him and say, this is all your fault, Roddy Piper. If only you were kinder to people.
The weirdest thing about the masked Canadian thing is that he did a New Japan tour in the gimmick.
He did it in New Japan, you say?
Yeah, I have a tape of it. I got it from Steve Freelander years ago.
Oh, my Lord, I did not know that.
It's a very interesting tape because it also has the McGuire twins on, and I don't think there's any other matches theirs on tape.
You know what? I remember seeing that McGuire twins match. I was eager to see it only because I didn't expect them to be good, but I'd heard so much about them, but you'd never see them on TV, and, when you see that match, you understand why they were never on TV.
And there's also, I haven't watched it in a while, so I forget who's in it, but there's also a match from El Toreo in it, from a Mexican taping. So this is from 79, so this might be something that's not around that much. So I'll get around to that and I'll let you know. But yeah, the McGuire twins, certainly interesting to watch because of the thing where they could not get in and out of the ring easily. So the deal was that they'd just sort of lean in the corner and go onto the apron.
Yes. Yeah, God bless them. Life looked uncomfortable for them.
That's one of the most weirdly mainstream wrestling things is that picture of them on the mini bikes.
Yes, I remember you'd see that picture every year in the Guinness Book of World Records. The heaviest twins.
That was like something a picture for them, wasn't it? Like everything. If you mentioned the McGuire twins, it was always that one picture all the time.
Yes. And one of them, that's how one of them died in 1979, is he fell off his motorbike.
And did they show that picture for the picture? That picture's right there.
Oh, that's sad. That would have been so sick.
You know they would do it.
Oh, Lord. Another funny postscript to the Canadian gimmick was in 1980. Piper, I don't think he lost a loser leave town, but he did leave the territory, and they suddenly brought in a guy called the Hood. And the Hood was actually Johnny Mantell. But what Johnny Mantell did is he wrestled exactly like Roddy Piper and did every little mannerisms. You know, he was like Ebison. I'm sorry,
Kikutaro.
I keep forgetting how to pronounce his name, and I shouldn't because he's brilliant. But he was like Kikutaro in that he had every little Piperism down. And every week the fans were screaming, Piper, 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 and wanting a showdown for him to unmask. But eventually he's just stopped dropping the mannerisms and just remained the Hood. Now, Steve Sims, you have not shared your favorite Negro Casas moment.
Well, it would be a tie between.
We were talking about that.
Between this year, where I think he has been just ahead of Randy Orton, I would say, as the best wrestler in the world, and the 1990-1991 period, well, roughly the 2-year period between December of 89 and December of 91, where he feuded for the first time with Liger. From the opening match in Japan wearing the original Foligno costume.
What was the deal with him, by the way?
I'm sorry?
What was the deal with him wearing the Foligno costume in Japan for so long anyway?
No, he just felt, of course, anything. Pena came up with the Foligno costume for his brother, and he felt that anything that would help him establish himself as something different from the Mexican wrestlers had a image problem in Japan, and the style was viewed incomplete, and the hardcore New Japan wrestling fans would tend to look at Mexican wrestlers and say, these guys are incomplete wrestlers, they're too small, they're not tough, they're not our kind of guys. And so Negro Casas wanted to really, really, really stick out. Plus, he always had a habit of upstaging his brother, so he just took his brother's costume with him.
Well, and another thing I remember hearing was, another thing that probably gave him a rub, because, you know, he was pushed fairly significantly when he went to Japan after that. And I heard that he was handpicked by Liger as his opponent. I guess Liger would have loved to have wrestled with Asai, but that was when Asai was with the UWF Japan promotion.
Yes, that was a big political thing. They weren't going to bring Asai back in for a long time because he had not qualified for the dojo originally. And yes, Casas. Well, what really helped Casas the most was when he went over there and studied their booking, how they're booking, and at that time Ricky Choshu was the booker. He came back to Mexico, and starting in '92, he did a lot of matches where he was like Ricky Choshu Jr., and he became such a disciple of Choshu that as long as Choshu was in power in New Japan, Casas could always come back and have work.
Wow.
Is that why Casas wears the shorter boots? To be like
that's where, when he'll wear he for a long time he used the sharpshooter / scorpion / whatever you want to call it as his finisher, and until he started going back to the casita magistral, however you want to say it. For a long time, he was using the sharpshooter just strictly as he just thought Ricky Choshu had the most perfect idea of how to do things. In fact, the original Gran Alternativa tournament, which is where the veteran wrestler teams with a rookie and they have a tournament, the winning rookie gets promoted up the cards, was because Casas was booked on one of the New Japan shows that had a Young Lions tournament that was Choshu's idea, and Casas thought that was such a great idea to promote somebody up the card. So I mean, he took the genesis for that idea straight from Choshu's booking.
Now, here's another question I have for you, Steve, is Casas was one of the names that was constantly bandied about after AAA made the raid of the CMLL talent in '92. And for several years, several reliable sources said Casas is jumping to AAA. Do you know anything? Was he ever seriously considering going? And do you think part of him sticking with CMLL for so many years is, did he have more creative control, or did he know he would always have a job there and like the stability? Or
no, unfortunately, you've asked me a question. I don't know the full scoop behind or the full answer. The scuttlebutt I've heard is just that at the time that in the early '90s, when AAA was making most of its offers to him, he was considered kind of aloof and kind of arrogant, and he at first didn't really consider. I mean, his dad was over there and his brother Eric was over there, but he didn't take it. But the main reason I've heard from day one is that he got paid so much money on his New Japan tours, and New Japan and CMLL had an arrangement where New Japan would not use AAA wrestlers, that he felt if he jumped to AAA, he would lose his bookings with Choshu, and he just wasn't going to do it.
A student of the business, somebody who studied over the years.
Like I say, that's third. That's not even secondhand. That's third-hand knowledge.
Third-hand knowledge, but that's like you said, the scuttlebutt.
Yeah, the second half of it makes sense, and it could well be the truth, but it's not something. I mean, I've spoken to Negro Casas myself, and I never asked or spoke to him about that or anything, so I don't have any direct knowledge of this.
Now, how did New Japan go from working with UWA to EMLL, and then to AAA, and then back to EMLL?
My understanding is it's much more New Japan oriented than Mexico oriented. It's just who has the power in New Japan and who they like, whether they like feel they can deal with Peña or feel they can deal with Paco Alonso. In New Japan, the booker who used to handle bringing in the Mexican talent when they brought it in was Black Cat, Puro Neko.
Yes.
And he had family relations with people in the CML offices. I mean, he's from the same family as the head CMLL booker, Panico, is. Right. They are kin, even though Black Cat has now passed away. So CMLL was always first, but there were occasions when different people, like anybody else, you don't want to bring the same foreigners. Well, I shouldn't say that. All Japan kept wanting to do it, but New Japan never wanted to bring in the same foreigners tour after tour after tour after tour. So they did look around. But as long as Kuroneko was around, CMLL usually wasn't ever out of the picture.
The thing about Black Cat that for some reason I never saw brought up that much, but it's kind of creepy when you think about it. I think every member of Los Gringos Locos, aside from Conan and Mysterioso's still alive, right?
Yeah.
Aside from them, are all dead.
Yeah, even some of the minor players, because wasn't that guy up in the Northwest?
Lion.
I'm sorry?
No, I'm thinking, but yeah, I mean, everyone, King Lion, Sanguinario died, Luis Piccoli, Black Cat.
Not Madonna's boyfriend.
Yes, it is true, though. I thought of that myself. Virtually everybody involved with the Gringos Loco has passed away.
Yes. And
I remember when Art Barr passed away, that was when it was still pretty shocking to hear of a wrestler's premature death.
And so many of them are tied into use or abuse of drugs that you can't buy over the counter.
This is true. I remember.
I wonder if they weren't all getting them from a similar source or having such a similar philosophy on them, and they all basically had the same arc.
And Conan had his near-death experience too.
Who's that?
Conan had his near-death experience too.
I did not know about this.
Well, with the kidney.
Yes,
kidney.
His kidney almost.
Oh, okay. I thought
problems almost killed him.
I thought you meant another one, like maybe one of the Soma episodes that. Well, I remember Luis Piccoli had several close calls before he actually passed away, and several people I knew who knew him 2 years before said if things don't change, he's not going to be around much longer, and
I still. The funny thing is, Kurt, what I remember of of Louis was going down to the AAA show in San Diego in '93 with the gang, and Louis was at the table at Denny's across the street from the arena. Were you in there? You were in there, yeah, because you introduced me to Rey Mysterio at the show. And Louis goes, "You're Dr. Lucha, right? Man, you could walk."
I don't remember this.
and he goes, "You know, you could walk right by me. I wouldn't have any idea who you are." He was trying to put two and two together. Was like, should I pay even attention to this guy? And I heard so much about him.
Oh my God, I don't remember that.
Yeah, we all went to Denny's before the show, and then we went right over to the show, and you introduced me and a couple other of us to Oscar.
Oh, okay. So this was the '93 one when Ron Skoller was promoting.
That's right. The '93
okay,
we had the show in L.A., and then the next night was in San Diego.
Yes, I do remember that.
By the way, have any of you ever seen Ron Skoller's website?
No, I haven't. I understand. Doesn't he do a business now where he does consultation, like high-scale divorce?
I'm not sure. I mean, the one thing I remember that I thought was interesting was, remember the Chappelle Show bit about the sex contract to prevent rape allegations?
Yeah.
Well, he has that in real life on his website.
Oh, God.
What?
He has
a pre-date prenup?
Yeah, like his Adobe Acrobat
God.
file that you print out, and before you engage in coitus, you and your partner sign it, and then that way you prevent any false rape allegations.
Okay, this is so surreal. So I would assume since it's legal, you have to have it notarized.
That's a good question.
Not necessarily in California, Kurt, because contract law here is, I mean, if I came into a restaurant with you, if we went back to the Caros in La Puente or something, and I signed a contract saying I will sell you my car for $1,000, and you signed it on a napkin at Caros, that's valid. That's at that point, the courts will uphold it if you show that that's my signature.
That's interesting because I've heard of some cases where schools like martial arts schools have been sued by people who have been injured, even though they have signed a clause saying I will not hold the school responsible for injury, but yet that was waived because of a lack of notary. So maybe it's just that the person had a good attorney who knew how to trump that.
It can be different things. It can be the California law that I have seen has been very. It's not the same in every state in the country, but tends to lean the sign that if two people agree to something in writing voluntarily, that it should be upheld.
Okay. Wow.
So I hope that Mistico agreed that he would go back to seminary school after losing his mass tomorrow night and signed it.
Don't ask me how I got reminded of this, but do any of you know if What's-Her-Face still has the Ron Rivera tape collection?
Oh, Lucha Goyle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
That was always
kind of disappeared. She ripped off a couple of people, I think.
Yeah, and he had so much stuff, because I remember reading somewhere that he had a lot of stuff that he never even released.
Yeah.
That he shot, that he had on tape and stuff.
Well, I remember Ron Rivera, I remember seeing him at matches everywhere for a while with his camera, and even thinking to myself, like, hey, I should ask him, if he has any of this stuff.
She disappeared like in 2000, too. 2000. I think that
and he had something going for a while with Revolution Pro. I was shocked. I heard he just got burnt out.
Yeah.
Which is understandable.
It was funny, though. I remember, right when he sold to Goyle, right before I bought some UWA tapes from Rudos on eBay, and then before I get the tapes, a couple days later, I see LuchaGoyle.com has now bought the collection of Rudos City. I'm like, uh-oh. But thankfully I ended up getting
what's funny is, shortly before that, first time I ever heard of Lucha Goyle is she bought a ton of stuff of me from eBay.
What did she buy?
Oh, I remember your eBay auctions. You had a lot of cool stuff up.
Well, I had a lot of fun stuff. I just had too much of it and had to unload it. And I loved eBay back then because people paid a lot for these little trinkets. Most of what I sold was a lot of Japan magazines, Japan trinkets.
I remember you had those awesome, like, stuffed little wrestler things that they had from the claw machines.
Oh, I had that disturbing octagon doll.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God. It was a little octagon doll, but it was a little baby face that was disturbing looking. I was so glad somebody bought it because I kept thinking it was going to come chew my throat out in the middle of the evening when I was sleeping.
Well, isn't that why you have a black cat, to protect you from scary octagon dolls?
That's why, but the black cat has ascended to heaven as of 3 years ago, so...
Yeah, that's so sad.
But I do have Kolchak, the Night Stalker, to protect me now. In fact, I just let him outside so he can go hunting evil leprechauns that try to, you know, enter the house, when the pestilence happens and the farm animals sicken in the fields.
I don't remember how I ended up buying it, but I did get the Aja Kong one for some reason. I just found it in one of my dresser drawers.
The Aja Kong figure?
The claw machine stuff.
Oh, Kong. Yes. Speaking of Aja Kong,
yeah,
one of the figures I saw on CMLL that intrigued me is this chick, La Nazi.
Oh, I love La Nazi.
Isn't she like a cross between, she's a cross between Dump Matsumoto and Rhonda Singh. I dig her. What a heel.
She's awful, though, in the ring, though.
She is, but she's a great heel.
Yeah,
she's not even there anymore. Ever since Pierre Roth had his stroke, she reacted horribly to that, and she's just never wanted to get back in the ring.
Yeah, really? Now, is there a backstory to that?
She used to work with him as his kind of valet or second or something.
Yeah, for the Brequist.
On shows for Pierre Roth, and he suffered a real serious stroke, because where he's not wrestling, he may not even live another year.
I saw a video of him recently, and it actually really made me sad.
Yeah, because he looks worse now than the last time he was sick. Remember, I don't remember what he had. What did he have before? He had like a
pancreatitis or something, but I may be thinking of somebody else. But
wow.
And he lost a lot of weight when he got sick back then. But now he looks even worse.
Yeah, that's really sad. Yeah. I was shocked when
it doesn't always happen. It happens to these people that are just completely full of life, because he was full of life. He was not a very calm, reasoned, ration college professor guy. He was living, living life at 100 miles an hour.
On low battery, so I'm going to try to call back on my cell phone, okay?
Okay, you got it. We'll be hanging here.
All right.
Actually, we're probably going to call it quits pretty soon, though.
Yeah, I guess we will soon. But there's
guys.
another. I cannot.
I don't want to do a 2-hour marathon show,
Yeah, this is true. You're right about that. But there's another wrestler I must bring up before ending this episode that I saw that just blew my mind. This
Rouge?
What's that?
Rouge.
Yeah, Rouge. I still haven't seen Rouge, and I haven't seen his. Brother Toof, too, or Mulan, or... No, this is the guy known as Metro.
Dr. Lucha is going to keep pimping on Rouge till we finally join his side.
Rouge's new gimmick is to get injured in every match.
Yep, there you go. Well, he was getting injured all the time in IWRG, too. So.
At first, I thought it was incompetence, but now I'm beginning to wonder if somebody isn't trying to make that as a gimmick so that he won't seem so pansy-like and seems tougher.
I think he's hurt, though. He has an injury that goes back from previous years.
Anyway, back to Metro for Kurt.
Metro. Have you seen this guy, Steve?
Yeah, I do know it's the fourth character in this gimmick. This is the first one that's been a real tall guy, and it's a sponsored gimmick paid for by a newspaper in Mexico City called Metro.
I thought it was a candy bar.
Well, that too.
That's what he looks like. He looks like a candy bar that's still in the wrapper. And you were hinting on Brian Alvarez's show, you were hinting that next year on the 77th anniversary show, it would be Atlantis versus who for Mask versus Mask?
Ultimo Guerrero.
Okay, this is what I think's going to happen. Metro is going to rise to the top by next year. and so will a wrestler known as Yak.
Metro, that would be a match I'd like to see, Metro and Yak.
Yes. Fredo just sent me, just turned me on to Yak on Twitter just the other day. Yak, this is the coolest thing. He also looks like a candy bar that has not left the wrapper. So we're not going to do a mask versus mask next year. What it's going to be, it's going to be Metro versus Yak. The loser gets unwrapped and eaten by Pat Patterson. It will sell out.
I better not touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, French-Canadian fans will fly in from Montreal to see this, and they won't get a screw finish either. Well, kind of a screw finish, but more an oral.
No, let's be careful with that.
Oh, but that would be money. No pun intended, it would be money.
Oh, Kurt, you have a mind that has...
Yeah. Now, see, if we combined my mind
but never duplicated.
Yeah, that's right. And if we could combine this mind with Fredo's great booking ideas for Antonio Peña's Ghost.
And my booking ideas are kind of sane compared to your stuff, Kurt.
Yeah, see if we mix your sane ones with my surreal ones.
Nothing I can come up with can be over the top next to your ideas, right, Kurt?
Yeah. Well, okay. Here's an idea. We have Peña's Ghost, and we run the ghost gimmick for a while, and then we take something from classic literature, so we can do a touch of Argentina wrestling in it. We'll bring in the Canterville Ghost to feud with Peña's Ghost.
That's funny. I thought you were going to go the Macbeth route.
Yes, and then we're going to have the ghost of Oscar Wilde be the referee for their match. It's just going to get better and better. Pro wrestling will change. Damn, if one of us win the lottery, wrestling is going to be different.
Well, how long can it be before Cardigion's ghost comes back?
Whoa, I never thought of that. Okay, Steve, you're our third booker. And I know Bix is off the line, but I'm sure Bix could throw some good stuff in there, too.
I mean, my idea was Brazo de Oro against Brazo de Plata, and the loser has to take off his colored armband.
That's great. Oh, and what we do is for a month beforehand, they have to, whoever's going to lose the armband has to lay on the beach so he gets the farmer's tan over his armband. So when he takes off his arm, he'll have this pale white patch there that he has to wear for eternity. It's just going to get better. And I guess you're right, Fredo. I guess this is a good place to wind up the show.
I think when you start going a little over the top, it's when we know it's time to call it a day.
This is true. Maybe this is how we should conclude each show, Fredo. Maybe we should kind of conclude each show with our booking gimmicks.
I think I'll blame it on Dr. Lucha for not coming prepared for the show.
Yes, we could only talk about the top match because I wasn't prepared enough for the other matches.
Well, Dr. Lucha unprepared is much better than the average commentator prepared. Like I say, he has a doctorate in luchology, the only person who has ever been awarded this, specifically because I invented luchology. I'm probably not qualified, but I am the only one who can give somebody a doctorate.
Well, I feel honored, although when you were in Japan, you met Shimizu, right, from Weekly Gong?
Yes, I did.
Yes, he deserves one. He deserves one, too, because he is my other mentor.
Okay, I'll have to consider him. Tell him to send me a letter signed by his mother.
Notarized.
Consider it.
Notarized.
Notarized. That's important, notarized. He can have it notarized in Japan or here or Guam, wherever he wants to have it notarized, as long as it's notarized.
Is it easier to get into this than the WON Hall of Fame?
Oh, definitely. Well,
absolutely.
Possibly, yeah.
I mean, this year I was mounting a write-in candidate for Lucky Pierre, but I don't think it got very far.
I think Lucky Pierre should be in a Hall of Fame. I'm not sure which Hall of Fame, but yeah. Well,
that or Cauliflower Alley.
I'm sorry?
I think they should put either Vandal Drummond or Lucky Pierre in Cauliflower Alley.
I agree with that. I mean, they give awards to everybody, so might as well give one to me.
Way to put him over, Kurt.
Yes. I love Cauliflower Alley, but, you know, they give awards out to people who will just show up there. I mean, damn it. I mean...
Next week's special guest, Carl Lauer.
Yes.
He just canceled on the...
Carl Lauer, yes, who is the very first promoter I ever wrestled for, by the way.
Oh.
In Bell, California, versus Surgeon number 2.
Maybe you will get an award then.
We fought to a 10-minute draw, but you know why we fought to a 10-minute draw? Because Surgeon number 2 was supposed to go over, but he forgot the finish. You want to know what the finish was?
What was it?
He goes to throw me into the turnbuckle. I reverse it. I charge him. He moves out of the way. I hit my head on the turnbuckle. He pins me.
Oh, God.
And he forgot the finish. Therefore, I went to a 10-minute draw with Surgeon number 2.
So we know
was he the Rudo calling the match?
Well, you got to understand, this was indie wrestling in Bell, California, at the Azteca Gym.
So high level stuff.
Yeah, not only it was my first match, it was his first match. So it was the goofy leading the goofy, only he was goofier than I, so I got to have a 10-minute draw, so I can mark
You're lucky your first match wasn't Augie Lawyer, or the finish would have been 7 minutes long.
This is true, and that's just the finish. That's not the whole match.
Yeah. If Augie happens to be listening to this from his Disney job or wherever he is now, sorry about that.
Yeah, we love you, Thunder Machine. Well, I guess that is a good note, although, man, I could tell you I could hang here all night, but Dr. Lucha, we request your return really soon.
Yes, in fact, if I turn out to be bald on Saturday morning, I'll call in next week for sure, and we'll go over what happened, and maybe we'll have to put up pictures on the websites and stuff.
Definitely. I think we'll have to have a website dedicated to those who have lost their hair because they made a bad call on the Mistico versus Negro Casas match.
And we'll preview the Antonio Peña Memorial Show.
Yes. There will be a lot to cover next week.
The glow-in-the-dark match.
Glow-in-the-dark match. It reminds me of the Blake Edwards movie, Glow-in-the-Dark, but we won't go there either.
Oh, this I don't know about. You'll have to fill me in soon.
Yeah, I'll write you about that one.
Write me about that one. We might just have to put that up on StanTheEmbryo.com, which I encourage everybody to go to, StanTheEmbryo.com. You can also find me on Twitter and Facebook under the name Vandal Drummond. And Fredo, plug it away.
We got to plug Bix's website. I think it's cageside.com or something like that.
Cageside.com.
What was it?
That's right. It's I think you can go to cageside.net or com.
It's got your podcast on there.
Yeah, and I think you can also access it by going to loseleavetown.net.
Well, I'll put it. Yeah, I know that one.
Yes, in fact, maybe that's something we should do. We'll have to, post some stuff on our various websites and plug Bix's site.
I'll plug
for those of you who don't know, there was a marathon 4-hour interview between Bix and myself about the Hall of Fame candidates for the Wrestling Observer, which I think we will. Do we learn them this week? Who got in?
We will learn next Wednesday, when not only will the names of the successful candidates, if any, be announced, but also will be the review of the CMLL anniversary show.
Excellent. So that's something we all have to look forward to.
The Observer that comes online next Wednesday and then gets mailed out next Wednesday around the
Yeah.
Will we be disappointed next week when we don't see any luchadors in the Hall of Fame?
I'll be pissed off. I'll be very angry.
It's that's another story for another time, but it's probably a Bix podcast. But the same people, if he sends a ballot to somebody in Mexico, he's just looking for somebody in Mexico to give an idea of the Mexican guys. So there's always a chance any of those guys could get in there. I mean, every Mexican that's been mentioned in the last two issues is an excellent candidate.
Yes,
Yeah.
And of all of them, boy, Dr. Wagner Sr., that guy should be in like Flint. I'm astounded he's not already in.
If they ever fall off the polls, they can also go to the historical committee, the same committee that eventually, if you can get a long enough bio, you might even get Kardashian in the Observer Hall of Fame.
That's how Cardigan got in.
And do they get like little Meltzer plaques or something for the Hall of Fame?
You know, I never thought of that. If they don't, we should make some without David's blessing.
You guys should make some.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Say we do it.
I don't know the whole selection process, but I can say between the three of us that Kurt and I, you started the Kardashian campaign maybe 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And we first started tag teaming on it maybe 2001, 2002.
Yeah, in fact, I can tell you it was 2002 because I remember I wrote a lengthy letter to Meltzer that he actually printed in the Observer arguing why Cardigan should be entered into the Hall of Fame as a historical figure, as an overlooked figure. And the reason I remember it being 2002 is I remember that was the first year I went back to Cauliflower Alley after several years and discussing it with Mike Tenay, who said he agreed with me. And ever since then, you and I have been plugging away campaigning, and last year it finally took.
Yes, I think one thing we have never revealed to the public is that we had actually sent in their very first piece on it maybe 3 years before he got in.
Yes, we did. We did. And I actually think it's a blessing in disguise that he didn't get in until last year, because I think the piece we wound up writing together was much better than the original.
I remember the original. It was definitely better than the original. Yes.
I mean, and that's kind of one of the chief aims, was to be able to portray him as thorough as we could, because I mean, Cardigan is like one of the most fascinating figures in the history of pro wrestling.
Not according to Missy Hyatt.
That was very bizarre.
Does she get a vote for the Hall of Fame?
I don't see why not. I mean, if Missy says he doesn't belong, maybe he doesn't belong.
Yeah. For those of you wondering about the
Missy Hyatt vote?
I don't know if she votes.
I've known Dave since 1987, and I still don't know the full scoop behind exactly how the Hall of Fame voting goes.
It is anonymous if they choose it to be. The reason we were joking about Missy Hyatt is she sent me an email telling me how much she enjoyed the Cardigan article, but she doesn't see how he could have gotten voted in. And she says, I'd never heard of him, and I think a lot of people never heard of him. And I wrote her back saying, well, that's because there's a subcategory for overlooked figures, and it's a much smaller committee, you know, that approves him or disapproves him. It's, you know, not the regular cast of voters. And then she wrote me back, yeah, but I still don't see how he got voted in, because so many people don't know who he is.
Well, she even posted it on your website, too.
Yes, that's right. That's correct. You can find it if you look in the comments of standtheembryo.com.
Yeah, you told me about the email, then you told me and then I looked on your website and it was on there too.
Yes, I know, I read it over again, and it kind of made my day, actually. I got a good kick out of it, but I was so jazzed that not only did we get him in, but that Meltzer printed our story in full. That really, that made my day. Well, I guess we really should wrap it up now, huh?
Yeah, we really should now.
So, standtheembryo.com, and don't forget to go to slambamjam.com, where you can get the most awesome collection of videos going over dozens of generations, dozens of territories, dozens of countries. So, remember, if you're walking through Southern California one evening and you see a bright light shooting across the sky, it is not a shooting star. It is a heavenly handful of Moncel's powder. You'll only see it in Southern California. Take care, my babies, and see you next week.